Namaste. Today we are going to have a conversation with the Secretary of National Biodiversity Authority, Chennai. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
First of all, let me thank you for taking out your time to give this interview. As you are aware, sir, there are a lot of doubts and misunderstandings regarding biodiversity conservation, and people are not aware about the Biological Diversity Act. So, you being the Secretary of the National Biodiversity Authority would be the best person to answer questions regarding this area. Let me begin by asking you, what is biodiversity and why its conservation is necessary?
Thank you, Nishita. Namaskar to you and to all the participants who are viewing this interview. Biodiversity is nothing but all the life forms, all the living species which we see around. In technical parlance, biodiversity is defined as the variety and variability of all life forms on Mother Earth. Say, for example, in the case of paddy, it's botanically called as Oryza sativa. Today there are about 1 lakh plus varieties of paddy, both cultivated varieties, land races, folk varieties. Every species has diversity within them. So, the species along with its diversity constitutes our biodiversity. The next obvious question is, why to conserve this biodiversity? There are 5 different reasons on why our biodiversity should be conserved. The first reason is the fact that every species on Mother Earth depends on another species for its own life. As part of evolution, species gets extinct and new species comes to Mother Earth. But artificially, if we take any action leading to the extinction of a particular species, that is going to affect a series of other species on Mother Earth. Species having commercial value are generally extracted in large quantities. Whether it is herbs, shrubs, trees, or medicinal plants, or in the case of animals, say for example carnivores like tigers, leopards, they are all poached for their skins. Elephants are poached for their tusks. Recently also you must have known that our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji introduced 8 cheetahs at Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh. In fact, cheetah was available in India, but due to our own greed and because of hunting at that point of time, that was prior to our independence, the cheetahs which were available in our country got extinct. So it is the duty of humans to ensure that our biodiversity is conserved, to ensure that the complicated food web or the food chains of different species are conserved, so that extinction of a particular species does not lead to a series of extinctions of other species. This is reason number 1. Reason number 2 is that in the terrestrial ecosystems, forests are repositories of biodiversity. Forests also regulate the climatic and hydrological patterns of Earth. In 18th century, with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, the countries, particularly the Western countries, which had technology with them, they were exploiting the countries which had biodiversity with them. Today, if you see, mega biodiverse countries are located around the equator, that is between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. India is one of the 18 mega biodiverse rich countries in the world. India can be proud to boast that we are host to about 54,733 species of plants and 1,02,161 species of animals. Roughly in the world, there are about 1.7 million species that have been recorded, and India alone constitutes about 8% of the globally recorded species. Now what is happening is countries which are located away from the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn are rich economically, rich technologically. They have started exploiting the countries which are rich in biodiversity during the 18th century with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. And when the 19th century science and technology started taking advances, the lifespan of human population also gradually increased. When India got independence, we were having about 33 crore population. Today we are more than 130 crore population. So there has been a 4-time increase in the population of our own country. So during this period, what has happened is, in order to take care of our growing population in different countries, governments consciously converted lot of forest areas into cultivable areas to produce more, to take care of the population. The effect of this conversion of forest into non-forest areas became visible by lot of changes globally, particularly global warming, El Nino effect, lot of changes in the hydrological patterns in different parts of the world. So it is in the interest of humanity to conserve the biodiversity which is available in our forest ecosystems, which provide the required air and water for all life forms. As you know, air and water are the elixirs of life, and they are indispensable. And in order to ensure that life on earth sustains itself, our biodiversity has to be conserved. The third important reason why we should conserve our biodiversity is the fact that the forest ecosystems have lot of species which are rich in genes. They have a lot of good genetic pool. And today, with the advances in biotechnology and genetic engineering processes, and since the land is restricted, on the other hand, you have to produce more to take care of the growing population. As part of our transgenic programs, we have to transfer valuable genes which are located in wild species in forests to cultivated species. Like for example, pest resistance genes, disease resistance genes, saline resistance genes, which are available in different species in the wild, have to be transferred to cultivated species to increase the productivity. So that is also one reason why we should conserve our precious biodiversity. The fourth reason why we should preserve our biodiversity is the fact that biodiversity itself is required both for our own living, as well as it forms the core component for the livelihood of different types of people. Like a large number of people depend on livelihood. Like for example, farmers. For them, biodiversity is their livelihood. They have to cultivate crops for their own livelihood. Similarly, the fishermen, they depend on fishes and aquatic fauna for their own livelihood. Similarly, in the case of tribal communities, indigenous communities, they collect and gather a variety of minor forest produce, non-timber wood forest produce from their forest ecosystems as part of their livelihood. And then they hand it over to the nearest tribal cooperative societies or forest cooperative societies or traders, local traders, which after that they get transferred to wholesale traders, and then it reaches to various commercial entities. In India alone, there are about 11 crore tribal population directly dependent on forest ecosystems for their livelihood. So, in order to ensure the livelihood of a large section of the population, biodiversity has to be conserved. And the last reason is, of course, the fact that along with biodiversity, there is also associated knowledge associated with this biodiversity, which has been preserved by different communities for many centuries. And this knowledge, which is available in remote areas, villages, with the rural people, with the tribal communities, have to be protected, and we have to ensure that if there is a commercial exploitation of this traditional knowledge, the people have to be suitably compensated. So these are some of the reasons why we have to conserve our biodiversity. And as you know, Government of India has been taking a lot of initiatives to conserve our biodiversity. In fact, in the Stockholm Conference in 1972, India was a pioneer to lead a group of 124 countries at that point of time to say to the world that Government of India is very serious in conserving our biodiversity. And subsequent to the Stockholm Conference, we have enacted several laws. In fact, the Air Act, Water Act, Environment Protection Act, the changes or amendments to our constitution to bring in a fundamental duty and a directive principle into the constitution to safeguard our environment were all based on the decisions taken after the Stockholm Conference. But in 1992, the world felt that something more has to be done because there has been a lot of changes in the global climate. So 3 conventions were born. One was the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. We call it UNFCCC. Then the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, and the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. All the 3 conventions are linked because the idea is we have to convert unproductive lands into productive lands. So we have to convert the desert-like ecosystems to productive ecosystems. And in order to do that, we have to improve or safeguard our biodiversity. And unless the biodiversity is safeguarded, the climatic changes or the global warming type of things cannot be addressed. So all these 3 conventions are linked, and Government of India is taking various measures. Even the recent introduction of the cheetahs in India by our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi at Kuno National Park is also testimony to India's commitment to safeguard our biodiversity, because as you know, prior to independence, India was hosting a lot of cheetahs, but due to hunting at that point of time, prior to independence, the cheetahs got extinct in India. But we have made an effort, sincere effort to bring back the cheetahs. And even recently at Ekta Nagar in Gujarat, our Honorable Union Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Bhupender Yadavji, and also our Honorable Union Minister of State, Shri Ashwini Kumarji, they all led a conference of all the state ministers at Ekta Nagar and actually outlined the government's commitment to safeguard our biodiversity. So today, India is a pioneer in biodiversity conservation, and we have led in terms of taking various policy decisions. We have enacted a separate legislation, a comprehensive legislation called the Biological Diversity Act to protect and safeguard our biological resources and all the associated traditional knowledge that are linked to these biological resources.
Thank you, sir, for setting the context and highlighting the importance of biodiversity conservation. Since you have talked about a lot of conventions, the steps taken, and the Biological Diversity Act, I would like to ask you, what is the legal framework regarding biodiversity conservation in India? What is the speciality of Biological Diversity Act? And what role does NBA plays, National Biodiversity Authority plays in all of these things?
Okay, thank you. See, after the Earth Summit in 1992 that was held in Rio, Brazil, this Convention on Biological Diversity was born. Today there are 196 countries. The text of this convention was signed in Nairobi on 22nd May 1992. That is why every year we are celebrating 22nd May as the International Day for Biological Diversity. At that time, 116 countries associated themselves to this Convention on Biological Diversity. India was also a pioneer nation to associate itself to the CBD. So, the Convention on Biological Diversity stipulates that every country has sovereign rights over its biological resources, and countries who are associated with the CBD, that is the Convention on Biological Diversity, have to take earnest efforts by way of bringing in some legislation or policy to safeguard their resources. To ensure that the biodiversity in their respective countries are protected or conserved and they are sustainably available or used, so that there is no extinction of any particular species. And the people who are conserving, cultivating, protecting these species are suitably compensated by the people who are extracting these species. So these were the three main objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And India, being a pioneer in associating itself with this convention, enacted its own law called the Biological Diversity Act, adopting the objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity, that is conservation of biological diversity, sustainable use of this biological diversity, and to ensure that there is a fair and equitable sharing of benefits that accrue from this biological diversity, that is to be shared by the users of the biological diversity with the people who are conserving this biological diversity, who are predominantly the tribal communities or our farmers who are living in rural areas. Now, the Biological Diversity Act, which stipulates that any person who wants to access any biological resource has to take prior approval from the National Biodiversity Authority or from the state biological diversity boards. So today every state, all the 28 states have their own state biodiversity boards. Every union territory has their own Union Territory Biodiversity Council. And at the grassroots level, every local body has a biodiversity management committee. So today there are about 277,000 biodiversity management committees functioning vibrantly in different parts of our country. Now, the people who are requiring the biological resources are categorized into two different groups. One group of people are categorized under section 3(2) of the Act, who are predominantly non-Indians. They are foreigners, NRIs, non-resident Indians, commercial entities or companies or associations or organizations which are registered outside India, or they may be registered in India but having a share capital or management with the foreign participation. So this is one category of people. This group has to take the prior approval of the National Biodiversity Authority, which is functioning in Chennai, for accessing any biological resources for three types of activities. That is, one for commercial utilization, Second is research, commercial research, or for taking any intellectual property right, any patent. The other group of people are purely Indians. They do not have any participation of any foreigner in their share capital or in their management. They are pure Indian citizens. They have to take the approval from the state biodiversity boards or the union territory biodiversity councils whenever they want to access any biological resources for commercial utilization. So far as research is concerned, in India, Indian citizens are exempted from taking any approval from either the state biodiversity board or from the National Biodiversity Authority when they want to undertake any research. In the case of patents, anyone who want to take any intellectual property right like patents have to come and take the approval from the National Biodiversity Authority. Now, as part of granting approval, the National Biodiversity Authority signs an agreement with the applicant. So, for applying to the National Biodiversity Authority, the NBA has installed a software, a portal, an online portal called the ABS portal, which is available in the NBS website, official website www.nbaindia.org, where the applicant can fill in the details, pay the required fees. There are different forms for applying. There is also a video which we have placed in the website, which actually clearly explains to the applicant on the form they have to apply. For example, form number 1 pertains to commercial utilization and research. Form number 3 pertains to IPR. Form number 2 pertains to transfer of research results. Okay, so different forms are there for applying. So once they apply, NBA sends them a draft agreement incorporating various provisions, and one of the provision is to share a small portion of their profit or gains that they are going to accrue with the people who are going to benefit from them. So NBA actually functions as some sort of a voice for the voiceless communities, both NBA and state biodiversity boards. They sign the agreement for the communities, on behalf of the communities. So the companies who are accessing the resources, they have to come and share a portion of their benefits as per the agreement signed with the NBA. And the benefit, which is popularly called as the access and benefit sharing mechanism, ABS funds, we call them as the ABS fund. This ABS fund is transferred to the communities if the benefit claimer is identified. Suppose if a tribal family provides a particular traditional knowledge to a commercial entity, say for example they have a cure for COVID and a commercial entity exploits them. So the benefit claimer is clearly defined, identified. So the company has to share up to 0.5% of their gains, sale value of a particular financial year to the communities, either directly or through the NBA, National Biodiversity Authority, or through the State Biodiversity Board, as per the agreement provisions. Suppose the benefit claimer is not identified, then we transfer it to the biodiversity management committees from where these resources have been accessed. Now the biodiversity management committees can use this amount for 3 purposes. One, they can use this amount, ABS amount, for conserving the species for which the amount has been received. Number 2, they can use it for conserving any other species which they feel has some commercial value. They can also use it for any socio-economic development in that particular village. Say for example, they want to install a street light. They want to furnish a tribal school. They want to provide some bedding material to some primary health center in their village. They want to repair a particular kacha road. They want to build a public toilet in the village. So they have flexibility in using this ABS funds in the way the committee wants. So suppose if there is no ongoing scheme in a particular village, so this fund can be used for utilizing the requirement of that particular village. So that is why this Biological Diversity Act is considered to be a classic legislation in modern India, which helps to promote rural development in our country. And NBA, from its side, the National Biodiversity Authority, has been taking earnest efforts to implement or fulfill the objectives of the Act to ensure that the conservers of the biological resources are suitably incentivized. They get the legal incentive in the form of the Access and Benefit Sharing Fund that will motivate them to conserve these resources directly as well as indirectly. See, when a tribal family or tribal community comes to know that a particular species is giving them an added revenue, they will take an added interest to protect that particular species. They will ensure that that species does not get extinct. So they know that this species has a commercial value, and apart from the amount which they are going to get at the time of selling the product, selling the raw material, they are also getting some sort of an added incentive in the form of ABS. So they will ensure that they will protect that species in the forest or in the cultivated areas. Indirectly also it helps, because the families which are living or dependent on forest products, once they know that a particular species has commercial value, they are not going to extract it in a large quantity, because suppose if I as a community, my requirement is only 100 rupees a day, I am collecting say 10 kilos of a particular species in the forest and providing it to a trader, and I am getting 100 rupees. Tomorrow if I am getting 10 rupees as a legal incentive in the form of ABS, I am not going to collect 10 kilos, I will restrict my collection to 9 kilos, because my requirement is only 100 rupees. So indirectly also ABS helps in the conservation of the various species in the forest ecosystems. And as a farming community, when the government is actually taking a lot of measures to more than double the farmers' income, this added incentive in the form of ABS is going to help the farmers to get an additional income whenever the ABS funds are transferred to them. So NBA and the state biodiversity boards function as some sort of a voice for these voiceless communities, some sort of a defense for these communities, and help the access of these biological resources. On the other hand, the corporates also benefit, because for them they need a sustainable flow of these biological resources. And when these biological resources are regulated, the access of these biological resources are regulated, it is a win-win situation for both the providers of these resources as well as the users of these resources. So in that way, the NBA helps to regulate or conserve or preserve our biological wealth in our country.
This framework is quite interesting, I must say. So sir, who are the major stakeholders of this biodiversity conservation, and what can an individual do to contribute towards this conservation?
Okay. So coming to the stakeholders, broadly there are two groups of stakeholders. One is the people who are providing these resources. They are mainly tribal communities living or dependent on the forest ecosystems. Then there are farmers who are cultivating various species, and then they are selling these species for to the various traders. Then there are research institutions who provide various biological resources to various corporates. Not only the resources but also research results. Even last week we had a meeting with the a group of scientists from the Central Leather Research Institute, Chennai.
Okay.
They have developed a research result. They have undertaken a research, and then at the end of that research, they have come up with the research result, which they have sold to a US-based firm, which is located in United States. Now, as per the law, they have to come to NBA and take the prior approval. The idea is that the company which is accessing the resource or the research result will have to suitably compensate the institution which is based in India. So, this is a legal way in which the people, this group of people, the providers of the resources, are compensated legally. So these are the three groups of people, that is the tribal communities, the farming communities, and the research institutions. They fall under one group of people who are categorized as the contributors of biological resources, conservers of biological resources, who take the required measures to cultivate, conserve, preserve, propagate, or protect the biological resources. The other group of stakeholders are the users of biological resources. They are commercial entities who use the biological resources for making various products. So in India, the corporates are growing, they have to grow, particularly the corporates which are dependent on biological resources, like the pharmaceutical sector. Today, India has been considered as the leader in vaccine production. Many of the Western countries are dependent on India-based firms for various pharmaceutical products. India has become the face of the Ayush industry. Several cosmetic industries depend on biological resources. Seed industries depend on biological resources. So these group of stakeholders who use the biological resources fall under a different set of stakeholders. They have to take the prior approval of the National Biodiversity Authority or the State Biodiversity Board whenever they have to access the biological resources. It is in their own interest so that the biological resources is regulated and it is sustainably available to the corporates. Now, there are three institutions which are set up in the Act. That is one at the national level, that is the National Biodiversity Authority. It is a 15-member body. Out of the 15 members, there are 10 members who have been drawn from different line departments. And then there are 5 experts, non-official members. Apart from these 15 members, there is a chairman who chairs the authority and is also considered as the CEO of the organization. And there is a secretary who runs the day-to-day activities of the NBA secretariat. Then there is a State Biodiversity Board. Every board has their own members. There is a chairman, secretary, and then official and non-official members. Every union territory has their own union territory biodiversity councils. Every local body is supposed to constitute a biodiversity management committee. Thanks to the orders of the National Green Tribunal, in the last 2 years alone, we have established 277,000 biodiversity management committees in all the local bodies at the village level and the block level and the district level. So today we have 277,000 BMCs, biodiversity management committees, and every biodiversity management committee is required to document the biological resources in their jurisdiction with focus on those species having commercial value. So these are documented in a register called the People's Biodiversity Register. So today we have about 265,000 people biodiversity registers which are available in different local bodies. So these are statutory institutions. The National Biodiversity Authority, State Biodiversity Board, Union Territory Biodiversity Council and the Biodiversity Management Committees are statutory institutions to take decisions to regulate, take suitable policy decisions to conserve our precious biological diversity. So far as the law enforcement is concerned, the forest departments of the various states and union territories have been authorized to register any offence committed under the Act. Alternately, the NBA, State Biodiversity Board and the BMCs can also file a complaint wherever there is any violation on the act, but the forest department can take suo motu cognizance of any violation that is happening in the act, and they can actually file cases before the concerned courts. So these are the different stakeholders which take care of the biological diversity of our country.
Thank you, sir. But sir, as you are aware, there are a lot of concerns regarding the implementation of the Act, and especially among the corporates. So what are the concerns of these corporates and what is your take on these concerns?
Okay. See, there are various concerns, particularly among the users of biological resources. Primarily, they are all corporates or undertaking activities like commercial research or commercial production. Now, the idea of this legislation, the spirit of the legislation is to ensure that the biological species or the associated traditional knowledge that is coming from India should not be prone to any biopiracy. Someone should not take our resource and go and take a patent outside India and start commercially exploiting it. So in order to ensure that the sovereign interest of our country is protected, this Biological Diversity Act was enacted. Now companies have had, actually now they are not having, had lot of concerns regarding the implementation of the Act. One concern was there was delay in according approvals. In order to address that, the National Biodiversity Authority has installed an online portal in our website. So sitting in their office, they can fill in the details. Though the Act has given time of about 3 months for NBA to take a decision, because NBA has to consult the State Biodiversity Board and the Biodiversity Management Committee whenever a large extraction of a particular species is involved by a company. Though there is a 3 months are permitted as per the Act, if the company or the applicant provides all the details, we are according the approval within a month. Okay. So sitting in their office, they can provide all the details online. So once the details are provided, required details are provided and the fees is paid, we grant the approval in the form of draft agreement. And then once the company also executes it on a stamp papered agreement, then that constitutes the approval. So that delay process has been addressed. In the last 2 years, there is no delay. Now the second concern is that there are a lot of technical terms, because this is a techno-legal act. There are a lot of technical terms which are not properly actually interpreted. Say for example, the Act has given exemption for certain categories of people, like say for example farmers. For their own livelihood, farmers or Vaids or Hakims who depend on biological resources, for their own livelihood, they are exempted from conventional breeding. So when we tell conventional breeding, it means selection of a particular plant that is showing higher productivity or better features. So the farmer, what happens is, in the field, if I am having a sugarcane crop or a cotton crop or a paddy crop, if I come to know that a particular group of crops within my field has better features in terms of physical features and productivity features, genetic features, then the farmer can take those seeds and then they can use it for the next cropping. Similarly for Vaids and Hakims, they are all exempted. So conventional breeding, which is exempted under the Act for livelihood purposes, are also adopted by seed companies, for example. They are also adopting conventional breeding. They also go to a field and then they have their own field. They take, they select the best crop within the field through process of selection or self-pollination or cross-pollination, which are conventional breeding practices. They also want exemption under the purview of the Act. But a seed company and a farmer cannot be placed on the same platform, because for the farmer it is a livelihood. For the seed company, they are making profit. The Act says that the company which is producing seeds, though they play a major role for the development of the agriculture sector of the country, they also gain a profit. So they are bound to pay a small portion of that gain to the farmers who have provided the initial seeds to these companies. That is the idea. So conventional breeding is one concern which is predominantly the concern of the seed industry. Now take this case of other industries. They have their own concerns, like why I have to pay the benefit sharing to a farmer or to a tribal community, because I am already paying the communities through the traders at the time of selling the raw material. So at the time of selling the raw material, the farmer or the tribal community does not know the actual value of the effort or the value of the raw material. Say for example, in the case of aloe vera is commercially purchased by the cosmetic industries for making various beautification products. So at the source, our study says that the farmers sell for about 7 to 8 rupees per kilo. But when it reaches a cosmetic industry, the company makes beautification products worth 7,000 to 8,000 rupees per kilo of aloe vera. So there is roughly about 1,000 times profit which the companies are making. So the Act and the regulations which were enacted in 2014 stipulate that the companies have to pay up to a maximum of 0.5% of their gains. That's all. They are not going to give a big chunk to this tribal community. It's only a maximum of 0.5% of the sale value of a particular species. Based on the sale value of the product, they have to give it to the communities. So this is a legal incentive, and when it reaches the tribal communities or the farmers, they will take an added interest to protect those species or conserve those species. So now, due to lot of efforts by the NBA, we have been undertaking a lot of awareness programs. More and more corporates are coming forward to pay the benefit sharing. NBA has also given the flexibility that the companies can directly pay the ABS amount to the biodiversity management committees or to the farming communities or to the tribal communities, and then sign the agreement with the NBA indicating that this amount is to be transferred directly to the biodiversity management committees. The idea is that this is some sort of a contribution by the companies to help the people who are supporting their business. So they are not going to help any other person. They are going to help the people who are actually helping them to sustain their business. And these companies also benefit in the sense that the communities will ensure that there is a sustainable flow of the raw material required for the business. And once they sign the agreement with the NBA actually through the CBD, through the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, we issue a internationally recognized certificate of compliance, IRCC. So that is globally recognized. So if you want to have better visibility for your product, you can take a IRCC by signing an agreement with NBA and show to the world that you are ABS compliant. That will have a lot of receptivity for your products in other countries. Today, since there are 196 countries who are parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, so every country who is associated with the CBD has started insisting that the products that is coming from different countries are ABS compliant. And once you sign an agreement with the NBA, you get that IRCC. Today, out of the 4,000 IRCCs issued globally, India alone has issued more than 3,100 IRCCs. So roughly about 75% of the globally issued IRCCs come from India. So India is considered a pioneer so far as IRCC is concerned. Today, NBA in the last few years, we have mobilized close to about 160 crore thanks to the contribution of various companies. And we have distributed this amount to more than 10,500 villages in different parts of the country, covering 22 states. And we have plans that in the next 2 months, we will be covering almost 30 states who would have been benefited. And in the coming years, almost all the states and union territories would get benefited from the ABS amount that is flowing from NBA. That is 28 states and 8 union territories. All these states and UTs will be benefiting from the ABS money that is coming from the companies. So the concerns of the various stakeholders, particularly the corporates, are being addressed. Government is also taking various policy decisions. We have also gone in for amending certain provisions of the Act to help the companies and also to help the farmers, because in order to propagate medicinal plant cultivation, also certain provisions of the existing Act have been slightly proposed for amendment, so that there is a win-win situation both for the communities which conserve the biological resources and to the users of various biological resources.
Since we were discussing about the concerns, everybody would like to know that what is the helpful thing about the Biological Diversity Act for the corporates and the research sector? How does BD Act help them and give them some advantage?
Okay, so for the corporates, as I just now mentioned, once they become ABS compliant, they get the approval from the National Biodiversity Authority, sign the agreement, and actually every year at the end of every financial year, they are giving the ABS money directly to NBA that would be passed on to the communities, or they have been given the flexibility to directly give this to the biodiversity management committees. They become ABS compliant. They are doing the business as per law. If any company is not taking the required approval, they are not doing their business as per the existing law. They are actually violating the law. And today, since globalization or liberalization has happened, the economy of different countries are now integrated. Companies have their own establishment, sister companies, their own branches in different parts of the world. So if you are law-abiding company, if you have complied with the Biological Diversity Act by taking the required approval, you get a better visibility for the products. You can proudly proclaim that you are ABS compliant, you are taking care of the communities, you have the required IRCC, International Recognized Certificate of Compliance, issued by the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, and also you are actually contributing to the development of rural India. You are contributing to the development of our own tribal communities, indigenous communities, farming communities. Your gains, a portion of which up to 0.5% is being transferred to these communities for their well-being. So far as research is concerned, research sector, there was a lot of apprehension that this Biological Diversity Act is becoming an impediment to research. Actually, it helps the research. In fact, the law itself was enacted by a group of scientists chaired by Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. They only drafted the initial text of this act. That was presented to the parliament, and then the parliament approved this. So this act was actually prepared by a group of scientists. So research sector per se benefits out of the act. See, as I told you earlier, Indian researchers or Indian research institutions, Indian universities do not need to take any approval from the National Biodiversity Authority or State Biodiversity Board. But when they are coming up with the research result and they are going to sell it to a foreign entity or a multinational company, it is in their interest to come to NBA and inform that they are going to transfer the research result to a foreign company or a multinational company, because that company is going to use this research result to make various products. Suppose I am a company, I am selling my research result for say 10 lakh rupees, and if I am happy with this 10 lakh rupees, I am at loss, because the company which is going to purchase that research result, he may be making billions and billions of rupees. So if they are going to take the prior approval of NBA, and if the research institution which is selling the research result to the foreign company comes to NBA and declares it, there would be a tripartite agreement, and NBA will ensure that up to 0.5% of the benefits that the company gets goes back to the research institution. So the research institution can use this amount to promote their research activities. They can buy new equipments, they can engage a lot of research scientists, research scholars in their institution, they can take up new research projects. So the research sector per se benefits out of this act if they comply with it. Now coming to the research undertaken by the commercial entities, which are multinational companies, they have to take the approval from the National Biodiversity Authority by paying a upfront fees, a small amount that is decided by the National Biodiversity Authority. After paying the amount, they can undertake the research. Okay, and whenever they are commercially using that research result, again they have to come and take the approval when they are going to resource the material from various villages. Okay, so the concerns of the research sector is also addressed now. Both the research sector and the corporate sector benefits out of the act. So they have to comply with the law. It is going to be a win-win situation for them as well.
Thank you, sir. As we know that NBA recently celebrated its 19th Foundation Day on 1st of October. So on this occasion, we would like to know what are the achievements of NBA in this biodiversity field, and what is your message to the community as a whole?
Okay. See, NBA was established on 1st October 2003. We have completed 19 years. The office is functioning in Chennai. And since 2003 till 2014, there were a lot of ambiguities on fixing the benefit sharing. And the Nagoya Protocol, to which India is also a party, came into existence in 2014. The Nagoya Protocol is part of the CBD. CBD is Nagoya Protocol. That protocol gave a lot of legal certainty and clarity in terms of benefit share. The protocol also reiterated that countries have sovereign rights over their biological resources. And once India became party to the Nagoya Protocol, India notified the access and benefit sharing regulations in 2014 based on the recommendation of the National Biodiversity Authority, which gave clarity on how the benefit sharing mechanism has to be put in place so far as biological resources are being accessed. Today, we have a clear-cut ABS mechanism where the companies or associations or organizations who desire to access any biological resource, if they want to do any commercial research, they have to pay an upfront payment. If they want to utilize it for commercial production, they have to pay up to a maximum of 0.5%. So if the regulation states that if the annual ex-factory sale of a particular company in a particular financial year is up to 1 crore, they have to pay 0.1% as the ABS fund. So if my sale value is 1 crore, I have to pay 10,000 rupees to the National Biodiversity Authority or to the State Biodiversity Board, who then transfer this amount to the communities after retaining 5% as administrative charges. If the sale value is between 1 crore to 3 crore, you have to pay 0.2% of the sale value. If it is more than 0.3%, you have to pay 0.5% of the sale value. So it is a very tiny portion of the benefits which you are going to gain on account of using the raw materials. Now the companies have also been given an option to pay based on the purchase price of the raw material, provided that there is a fair and equitable sharing of benefits. Say for example, a research institution provides a microorganism to a pharmaceutical company based in USA. That microorganism may be sold for say 10,000 rupees. But the pharmaceutical company based in USA may be earning billions and billions of dollars. But the Act says that you cannot pay 5% on the 10,000 rupees. So there is no equitable sharing of benefit. You are going to get huge profit. So you have to pay based on the sale value of the product. That amount has to go to the research institution which has provided the microorganism to you. So there should be equity when it comes to benefit sharing. So one of the achievements of NBA is it has helped to bring more clarity on fixing the benefit sharing by notifying the ABS regulations in 2014. India has also taken a lot of efforts to notify certain species which are on the verge of extinction as threatened species. Today there are more than 325 species which have been declared as threatened species, both fauna and flora. The inputs of the Zoological Survey of India and the Botanical Survey of India have also been taken while notifying these species in the official gazette of the Government of India as threatened species. And once a species is notified as threatened, generally we do not grant approval for large scale extraction of such species till the threatened status reduces. Okay. India's National Biodiversity Authority has also taken efforts to notify about 17 repositories in different parts of the country to ensure that the species which are rare or endemic, a voucher specimen of such species are retained by the companies in these repositories, so that in case it gets extinct, we have a voucher specimen. So today we have about 17 repositories designated under the Biological Diversity Act in different parts of the country. NBA has also taken efforts to advise various state biodiversity boards, state governments to notify areas outside the forest ecosystems as biodiversity heritage sites. Today we have about 33 biodiversity heritage sites in different parts of the country. We are also taking more efforts to notify more biodiversity heritage sites. These are areas which are located outside the forest ecosystems, okay, but which are rich in biodiversity. They may be rich in bird biodiversity, avifauna. They may be rich in medicinal plants. So these are areas located outside the jurisdiction of the forest department, but which are rich in biodiversity. These are managed by the biodiversity management committees. And the best part is that once an area is notified as a biodiversity heritage site in a particular state, NBA grants financial assistance for preparing a management plan for that biodiversity management heritage. The ABS amount that is collected by the State Biodiversity Board can also be used to manage these sites. Okay. NBA has also taken efforts to install various online portals to help the various stakeholders to apply, to file their applications online. Today, NBA has granted more than 3,800 approvals to various stakeholders. And in the last 3 years alone, we have granted approvals, more than about 2,600 approvals in the last 3 years alone to various institutions, individuals, patent applicants, companies, and we have been granting them this internationally recognized certificate of compliance as well. In the last few years, we have mobilized about 160 crore. We have started distributing this amount to various villages, biodiversity management committees. As I told you earlier, we have distributed close to about 10,500 villages have benefited out of this ABS amount. We have also distributed funds to different research institutions from the ABS amount which we have collected. Several ICR institutions, CSIR institutions have benefited from the ABS amount. And we are also taking earnest interest effort to ensure that the patent applicants, whether it is institutions or individuals, are not in any way troubled. So we are taking effort to ensure that approvals are granted by NBA at the earliest. So NBA has been regulating the movement of biological resources from our forest areas, from our rural areas to various entities by way of granting approvals. NBA has also been providing the required advice to both the central government and to the state governments so far as biodiversity related matters are concerned. So NBA is the chief advisor for the government of India for taking policy decisions at the national level. So we are going to have the next conference of parties at Montreal from 7th to 17th December of 15th COP conference of parties at Montreal, Canada. So NBA has been providing the required inputs, advice to the government of India to take a position on various issues pertaining to biodiversity. And NBA has also been facilitating the movement of resources to ensure that corporates do not suffer for want of resources. NBA has been guiding them wherever corporates want a particular resource. NBA has the resources, or we have the data on where a particular resource is available. So corporates who want a particular resource can approach NBA, and NBA can guide them that this particular resource is available in this part of the country. For example, species available in Western Ghats may not be available in Eastern Himalayas. So NBA has the required database. So if companies want a particular resource, NBA keeps facilitating that. In fact, companies or research institutions, universities located outside the country also keep contacting us for various resources. And we as Indians can take a lot of pride that we are one of the 18 mega diverse countries in the world and having 4 hotspots. So we have a hotspot in the form of Western Ghats. We have the Eastern Himalayas. The entire Northeast is declared as a hotspot. Then the Nicobar Islands. We have 4 out of the 34 hotspots are located in India. Hotspots, I think you must be knowing that to declare as a hotspot, there should be minimum of 1,500 endemic species, and 70% of the original endemic species should have been lost. So these are rich in endemism. These are rich in species of different flora and fauna, and India has to take the required initiatives to protect these hotspots and different forest areas in different parts of the country, both biodiversity located in forest ecosystems, in the rural areas, in the aquatic bodies, and in the agricultural areas, and also in the non-forest ecosystems in the form of biodiversity heritage sites. So NBA has been taking a lot of initiatives to create the required awareness among various stakeholders, including the officials of the line departments, the state biodiversity board officials, the forest department officials, the judicial officers, both the judges, magistrates. We keep giving a lot of awareness campaigns. We have a lot of stakeholder workshops for various stakeholders like companies, corporates coming from different sectors like Ayush sector or seed sector or fragrance sector, cosmetic sector. We keep interacting with them, research sector. We have a lot of interaction with the scientists to propagate the awareness about the need to conserve our biodiversity, why this biodiversity has to be conserved, what is the benefit that country will benefit, how the research sector will benefit, how the corporate will benefit, how the rural India will benefit if this biodiversity is conserved. So together, if all the stakeholders join together, NBA from its side will take the lead to ensure that the biodiversity wealth of our country gets adequately safeguarded in order to protect the national interest and also to help our own people who are conserving this precious biodiversity wealth.
Very well, sir. Thank you so much for walking us through Biological Diversity Act so thoroughly. I wish NBA more heights and successes in the future. And thank you for taking out this time and giving us a very insightful interview on Biological Diversity Act and its conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishita. Thank you.